Future's now, old man.
What it do? Beep beep vroom. This is Future First Podcast, where we're helping you win today with the Future First mindset. I'm your co-host Jmac here with my co-host Jose. What's going on, dude?
What's up, Jmac? I'm good, man. How are you been?
Oh man, things are good. We're recording on Thursday this time, so that we can get the pod out on Friday for you guys, because we feel like we want to get that information out sooner. But because of that, we're fresh off of Thursday night football here, man. How was the game?
It was good, man. I guess if you're, if you started Henderson, it was good. If you started pretty much anyone else, it was mediocre to bad. Brees Hall, not very good. Diggs had an okay game. PPR, back Hollins, who we're going to talk about, I think, a decent amount in this episode, had another pretty decent game. Drake May, kind of mediocre, had the yards, not the touchdowns, a little bit of running. But otherwise, man, the big star, the big thing, the big headline coming out of it is our boy Hendoghini continues to be unleashed, continues to get all the opportunities. Yeah, screeching in, coming into the cul-de-sac, parking his car, loud music and all. Yeah, man, I think it's interesting if we want to talk about a little bit just the parallels between his kind of breakout, the timing of it compared to like Gibbs during his rookie season. There's a lot of parallels there in terms of how much the team liked Monty and continues to like Monty, and how much it seems like the Patriots like Ramondre, and I think will continue to like Ramondre. It's not for one comparison, but I think it is a callback to something that's happened in recent history with a rookie kind of breaking out due to an injury.
Yeah, for sure. Let's put a pin in that. We'll come back to that in our quick hit here. But yeah, man, it was awesome to see. I mean, 3 touchdowns. It's amazing. But yeah, man, I was happy because I took the Patriots for my Survivor League. I'm one of 8 teams left. With I think we started with like 30 something. So you can have 2 strikes in that league. I have one, so it's kind of win or go home here. But yeah, man, made it through. Pats. I think I'm just gonna pick on the Jets for like the next 6 weeks too. Like I have all the teams that are playing them through week 15, and then I have like the Chiefs and Bengals that I'm gonna say for a 17 and 18, I think. And I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I'll keep you guys posted on that. But that's been fun. Are you doing any pick'em leagues or survivor leagues like that?
No, I mean, we have the little pick'em that we did with some of the friends from the group from the Toe Clan, but apart from that, no, I don't have like a big group of people that are into like the Survivor. So I've always looked for one, but I can never really find one to get into. So it's definitely something that
Ooh,
I've been meaning to get into.
content idea. Maybe we can set something up for next year.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, and side note, I'm really bad at pick'ems leagues. Don't ever tail me for the pick'ems. I guess for the Survivor, I've been okay. All right, let's get into the nails here. We got like and subscribe. We're on YouTube. Touch down on that like button. Go for 2 on that subscribe. Leave us a comment, as always. We love engaging with you guys. Let us know if you would like to do a Survivor League with us next year. Shout out to Fox, who's always helping us with our graphics. Follow her on X at bfoxworth07. We're also on Spotify and Apple Pods. Follow and rate the show. Drop a review for us. For the episode today, we're going to talk a little bit more of some deadline deals here. We covered a lot of it in the last episode, but as the next deadline approaches, we wanted to kind of tackle it in a little bit different perspective this time around. And then we're going to get into when that deadline closes, what can you do to keep your squad going through those bye weeks, and if you have any injuries or you just need a flex plug-in off the waiver wire. So we're going to talk about the Slop Shop, getting it done with what's left over. But first, man, as always, a quick hit. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. Yeah, we wanted to come back and talk about Hendo here again because we just saw him go off for 3 touchdowns. I think he had 5 catches for something like 30 yards. And I don't know what his rushing total was on the end of it. Was it 80 yards, something close to that? Do you have it handy?
Yeah, I think it was right around there. Give me 1 second. I had
Yeah,
it.
no worries. And then he looked really good. I do want to say like that offensive line is doing him some big favors, open up the holes to get him into the end zone. However, on that first touchdown, he put a real nice juke move on some guy who made it into the backfield, and he was about to bounce it outside, juked the guy, went bounced inside, cut through the line, and then he got arm tackled, like 5 yards after the line or so. Kind of tried to spin out of it, and then his offensive line just came and shoved him into the end zone. So that was a cool one. And then the next one, he just found a hole wide open, ran right in, and then his third touchdown on the catch, he again wide open, leaked through up the side, found the back of the end zone. No one was covering him. Drake May floated an awesome ball to him, and 3 touchdowns later, he's got a hat trick and something like 30 points in a half PPR league already.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, it is a lot of work by the done by the touchdowns, but I mean, he has to be on the field to get those opportunities, and he was the guy they went to around the goal line, and in those situations where they needed to get the points. So yeah, it was 19 carries for 62 yards, so nothing crazy
62.
there. 5 for 5, receptions. If in full PPR, that's always going to be great. It was only for 31 yards, but he did have the touchdown, like you said. So 3 touchdowns. I think the main thing to keep in mind, and especially maybe if we're talking deadline here, if your deadline hasn't passed, how confident are you that going forward he's going to continue? It could be really bad when Ramondre comes back. I don't expect it to, just because I think the genie has been kind of let out of the bottle here. It's kind of hard to not have him on the field, but I do think when Ramondre comes back, it's going to be a split timeshare. It's going to be a split the two. So I don't know if maybe you have a chance, if you're not 100% on him, you're not feeling like he's going to be the guy going down the stretch. There is a chance for you maybe to sell high, or just sell for something that you're more secure in going forward, right? That doesn't have these sorts of question marks. It's definitely something. If you still have a deadline, maybe your deadline's week 12, week 13, 14, right before the playoffs, it's definitely a consideration. I think you should have in mind, especially if Ramondre maybe continues to miss practices and miss games.
I think that's super smart, and I've already kind of been looking into that. So I have him, and I think we're talking redraft here, right? We're not.
Yeah,
Okay.
dynasty, and yeah, we holding, but yeah,
Yeah,
just for the redraft.
for sure. Just clarifying that. And in the redraft league, it's a 14 team league. I'm in, pretty concretely in fourth. The two teams ahead of me, one team is tied with me in fourth, and then the two teams ahead of me are like one's 2 wins ahead, and the other one is 1 wins ahead, and they play each other this week. So hopefully they even out, and I can squeak in there in the next 4 weeks and get up there. But either way, I have Henderson in that league. I also have Achan. I also have Quinchon Judkins. I have Travis Etienne and Hendo also. And I'm looking at Hendo, and I think my quarterback is Caleb Williams. My tight end is Colston Loveland, I think. And so it's not great on that front, but I'm stacked at wide receiver. I have Egbuka in that league. I have Rashi Rice. I'm looking really good in that league. So I'm looking at Hendo, and I'm like, can I flip Hendo here? And I was looking at maybe trying to get Trey McBride, cover up that tight end slot. I don't think that's happening because that guy's 2-8. But the one of the managers who I'm playing this week actually has Tyler Warren, and I was thinking about sending Hendo for Tyler Warren in a redraft. What do you think about that? Do you want more on either side of that?
I think that's pretty fair. I mean, if your thought on Henderson is that he's going to be in a backfield timeshare where he's not the 1A, right? When Mondre seems to be the coach's preferred player, he's just been injured. Then it's, I think, a pretty fair and pretty good trade. I mean, if it's if you're projecting that Henderson somehow is going to continue to do this and continue to see this workload even when Ramondre comes back, I think you definitely would be selling a bit low. But that's kind of where you have to take that gamble. And at the end of the day, it's not a core piece to your contention, and it solidifies probably your weakest position. That's actually exactly how I was
Yep.
thinking of using Henderson to shore up a quarterback spot or a tight end spot. because you can really, really, you know, shut the door on your contention, or shut the door on other people's contention window if you solidify those 1Z positions, especially in redraft. I think this is, like we've been talking about, the perfect time of the season to go do it. And I'm pretty sure when we talked about it, the Patriots have a very favorable rest of season schedule for running backs. But if it's not going to be Henderson as the main guy, I don't think it matters that much, right? So yeah, I would love that if you could get Tyler Warren. I think Daniel Jones and the Colts are going to continue to be a prime offense, and he seems like a big part of that.
Yeah, and my thought too was, start prepping for the playoffs here, which the Colts in the playoffs play at Seattle, San Francisco, and then Jacksonville at home for the third best playoff schedule for tight ends, or the third easiest. So I kind of like approaching it that way, just kind of shoring up that spot, and playing for to win it all here, and selling high on Hendo, because I do think when Ramondre comes back, that this workload for him doesn't stay the same. And I mean, he has 5 touchdowns right now, 5 touchdowns in 8 quarters. I think regression's coming for him. I don't think it's going to stay that way for too long. So if someone is just looking at the box score, I think it's a sneaky sell high moment here if you can get it done.
Yeah, 100%. Especially because the trade deadline's coming, and people are always in need of running backs. So there might be a desperate team trying to sneak into the playoffs with, a Tyler Warren, a Brock Bowers, a McBride, or one of the elite quarterbacks, a Lamar, a Josh Allen, a Mahomes, who's just barely, and you can throw your quarterback and Hendo and go upgrade a big time piece. I think those are the type of moves that can really help and solidify you winning a championship.
For sure. Yeah. I kind of hijacked this to talk about the trades. We were supposed to talk about how Hendo is the new Gibbs here, with the lightning or I guess the Sonic and Knuckles. But did you want to talk about that real quick, or do you want to just move on?
I think we kind of talked about it tangentially without
Okay.
like specifically naming Gibbs. Yeah, I think we nailed that one pretty well.
I love talking trades, man. I can't help myself.
It's the best part, honestly, when you can get it done, when it works, you can really
All
show
right.
what you're made of.
We talked about Ramondre a little bit. Let's talk about him a little more in this next segment in Deadline Deals here. All right, the trade deadline is here. The banners are up, the prices are slashed. It's your last chance to make a deal before the market shuts down for the year. So, man, let's take a look at some of these old reliable models, some vets that nobody seems to want to pay too much attention to, and who we think is some filthy jalopy beater production over here.
Yeah, man. Like you were saying, Ramondre, right? That's kind of the name we were kind of just talking about, backfield mate with Henderson. It doesn't seem like his injury, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it doesn't seem like it's something long term that should be keeping him out much longer. And like I was saying when we were talking about Hendo, he has one of the better strength of schedules remaining down the line here. So I think he's a great target. I think you wanted to mention like older running backs, kind of put the 2-for-1 here. Aaron Jones, he's completely come back, and it doesn't seem like they really either liked what they were getting or liked where things were going with Jordan Mason. Unfortunately, our Mason army's kind of falling apart. It's not doing what we thought. He's not looking like the same running back. So Aaron Jones has been doing it, and he's been getting a lot of work, a lot of touches. He just needs to stay healthy if you want to gamble on that. But these are the old reliable. Your car breaks down, you don't have the money to trade in and get a new one. You want to kind of get that Kia or Honda that's got 250,000 miles, but it's got another 25 to 50,000 miles to get you through the time until maybe you can afford a higher end model. So that's kind of how I see those two guys. I see them as like your RB3, your flex guy, that type of thing. So I think that's why those guys are interesting. They have good schedules, and their production and what the team thinks about them mostly is kind of what's interesting about them.
Yeah, I think those are really smart. I think Ramondre Stevenson is probably really a good time to buy right now too, because the market is probably going to be a little bit lower on him. Given what we've seen from Gibbs Jr. and Hendoghini over here. Um, so I'm curious, what are you comfortable sending pick wise or player wise, or however you want to try to acquire Ramondre here? Or how are you trying to get him on your squad? What's a good price?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking maybe dynasty, right? I'm okay with a third. I think a second gets a little bit pricey. Maybe you need something back on top of Ramondre. It's always going to be contextual to like who are you trading with. If he's already on a contender, it's going to definitely be harder to pry him off somebody's hands. But maybe you have um, a, a producing wide receiver, or, some one of those exchanges that you can make where it doesn't feel necessarily as bad, like a wide receiver three that you have at the end of your bench. You're not playing a lot. Maybe like a guy like say Flowers, who still I think has a lot of good name tied to a good quarterback in Lamar. That type of wide receiver who you're just not very excited to start week in week out if you need the running back help. That's kind of how I feel. Aaron Jones, I feel a little bit more strongly just because he gets a lot of passing work, so there's always kind of insulation from a bad rushing game with what Aaron Jones is seeing. So I would feel maybe a little bit more comfortable going after Aaron Jones harder than Ramondre, but not much, right? Like I think a second is still too expensive. Like the best deal is if somehow these guys are on the same team and you could throw a second for both, or a second and a third for both, or something like that.
Hmm.
That's kind of where I would be pretty interested. But otherwise, I'm not spending much more than that to acquire these guys. I mean, there are a reason there. The prices are slashed for a reason.
No, for sure. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, and you were saying sending Zay Flowers for one of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a big Safe Flowers believer. I think he still holds a lot of value, unless you're like in full PPR. But what we've seen from Safe Flowers, I think we know what he is, and he's just a guy that I'm okay. That might be a type of player that has enough name value, and he's young enough in a dynasty where maybe you can get a third back on top of one of these older guys. But I just feel like those guys, those running backs will be more impactful for your run down the stretch than Zay Flowers will. I just think they're going to score more points. Their schedule are the fourth and fifth best. When we're talking about Aaron Jones is the fourth best, and Ramondre is the fifth best. The only thing about Minnesota is they have to play Detroit in the championship game, but they could be fighting for a playoff spot. Otherwise, they get Dallas in week 1, and then they get New York in week 2 of the playoffs. That's week 15 and 16 respectively. And then the Patriots get to play the Jets again in week 17, Baltimore week 16, and Buffalo week 15. So all really
That's juicy.
yeah. So that's kind of why we're kind of pointing these guys out. It's not just what they can do. Obviously, they're not sexy names, but sometimes you gotta. The win doesn't have to look pretty. It doesn't have to be the big
No,
splashy that wins you the league.
no way, man. I mean, these guys got some mileage on them, but they got some fresh tires, and they got an oil change recently. They'll get you where you need to go. I would implore you to get a little bit more on top back with these guys for Zay Flowers. I think the market's a little higher on him than that, even if you're not. But still,
Yeah, I mean, 100%.
I'm
I mean
just
that.
looking out for you, Jose.
Yeah, 100%.
All right, let's get into these next guys here. Some wide receivers. We got. We're just gonna kind of package them up as a team because I think there's some ambiguity in these wide receiver rooms here, which is going to be the San Francisco wide receiver room and the Patriots wide receiver room. So let's talk about Jennings and Pearsall first. I don't know if you want to throw anyone else in there, feel free to. I think George Kittle might even be able to kind of land in this with Brock Purdy getting the start this week. He's back, getting on the field. So I think if it were me, I would probably prefer Kittle of all those guys, but he's obviously the most expensive. I think Pearsall is got a little bit higher of a price tag also, just because he's got that youth and he showed some upside at the beginning of the season. So if you wanted to attack that way, you're probably gonna have to throw, I don't know, a second plus at the very least to get him. You might be able to get the injury discount on him, but I think with him being activated and coming back this week, I think that price is going to be a lot higher than you want to pay.
Yeah, 100%. And he had a pretty decent game, didn't he, last week? In terms of like, if no, was it 2 weeks ago?
Jennings had an okay game. Pearsall's been hurt. He hasn't played since
Oh,
week
sorry, I thought you were
week
still
three.
talking about Kittle. I missed that
Oh,
you were.
Kittle. No, yeah,
Yeah, Kittle.
Kittle good.
Yeah. Yeah, Pearsall, I mean, it should be his first game back. We'll see what he's got. But if you believe that, the 49ers with Purdy, Pearsall, are, going to be playing good football down the stretch, I think now is when to buy, because I feel like if if your trade lane line goes a few weeks and he comes back and has a few of those good weeks, whoever's been sitting holding Pearsall is probably not going to then be like, oh, I waited 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and now he came back and played well. Now I'm going to sell him. It's kind of the Rasheed Rice thing, where if you believe that Pearsall is going to be the 1A there, or the best wide receiver, you should go get him now. And like you said, I think it's really going to cost you not very much whatsoever. Between him and Jennings, don't have a strong feeling either ways. So however you kind of see it going, I think Pearsall with Purdy particularly has looked pretty good. And then obviously Kittle, as you were saying, would be the most expensive, but I think he's the one that stands to benefit the most from Brock Purdy's return and him running the offense compared to Mac Jones. So yeah, I think it's ambiguous. If I know you're a pretty big Pearsall fan, so I kind of default to you, especially being the 49er fan, of kind of how you would stack these guys. So if you're, what would you trade for Pearsall? Like, how would you go about it? Would you be looking to just have him be kind of like a throw in a bigger deal, or are you just looking at his price straight up? How would you attack it?
I think an early second is probably what it's going to take to get him. I paid, I think we talked about it in that last league. I traded him plus Braylon Allen for Devonta Smith. So when you kind of think about that, yeah, like Pearsall as like a late first in that league, which a 14 team kind of gets you into Devonta Smith. Honestly, like I probably got into Devonta Smith at a pretty good price there. But this guy had been hounding me for Pearsall all year, so I felt like it was a good deal. But yeah, I would want to pay no more than an early second, or if I had a contender second, maybe packaging that up with like a third, or giving them like a 2-3 swap and that late second on top of it or something in a future. I think that's probably where I would go. That seems like a lot now that I say it out loud, though.
Yeah, it's hard because he's been injured so much, right? Like even back, obviously when he suffered the gunshot wound, that's not really much you can say about that, but he has missed a lot of games. He has missed a lot of practice. So he's definitely one of those risky players, but I feel like they're going to need, if they're trying to make the playoffs, they're trying to make the push here. They're going to need somebody besides Kittle and McCaffrey. They really
Mm.
will need to get somebody else the ball. So I think making a bet there is definitely a wise choice. I mean, we don't need to make the whole episode about Zay Flowers, but since I used the name earlier, how do you feel about Safe Flowers, or a guy whose value I think continues to go down, or one of these injured guys like Garrett Wilson? Obviously, Garrett Wilson a lot more for the future, but he's on IR now. He might not be available for the rest of the season from somebody, or even Travis Hunter. Maybe you're sitting on one of these players. Like, what are you looking back, taking maybe a hurt asset and turning it into an asset you think that can produce? How much more would you want, if we're looking at it through the dynasty lens, to get off Travis Hunter or off Garrett Wilson to like a Ricky Pearsall?
Yeah, I think if we're talking Garrett Wilson, I think it's going to be a little bit more like I would say the equivalent of a first, probably on top of Pearsall to get me off of Garrett Wilson. I still like Garrett Wilson. I still believe in the talent. I don't know what to do with him right now, but I think that's just kind of his market value right now, and that's I don't think I would be trying to get off of that for anything less. He's obviously a target hog in a depraved, otherwise depraved wide receiver core. So, and then if we're talking about Zay Flowers for Pearsall, something about a second on top feels about right. And then yeah, for Travis Hunter, that one I don't know, man. Like straight up, like if I could get a third on top of it, maybe something like that. You could probably get more. Like if you find someone who really believes in Travis Hunter, I think you could probably get a second or more on top of that.
Yeah, that's exactly when you said, a first on top of Pearsall for Garrett Wilson. That's kind of exactly where my mind went to when as I was asking you. But yeah, I mean, if you're good with the 49ers wide receiver room, I think there was another
Yeah,
kind
let's
of
move on here.
package of wide receivers that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, the Patriots wide receiver room, it feels kind of wide open. They've been spreading the ball around quite a bit. You have a different guy popping off every week. It feels like tonight we had Diggs go off for over 100 yards. But before that, it was Pop who went off for, I think, a touchdown and some amount. And Matt Collins has been making quite a splash in the absence of Booty. But before that, Booty was getting it done too. So I don't know. I guess if I had to rank these guys of who I wanted on my teams, it'd probably be Diggs, Hollins, which is weird to say, Pop, and then if Booty comes back, I think I would slide Booty in front of Pop. Pop that Booty. But yeah, man, I don't know if you have a favorite of these guys, or who you like of all of. I think Hollins is probably on waivers, and maybe even some dynasty leagues.
Yeah, he's definitely a name that if you are a redraft, he's probably out there. Like you said, some dynasty, I would definitely peak the waiver wire. Like we're talking about, these are kind of some uh jalopies, and not totally broken down, but Diggs is kind of entering that phase of his career. I definitely have him ranked kind of exactly like you, with Diggs kind of at the top. I think he's just the most reliable, the most crafty. His days of being elite are gone, but in terms of a nice wide receiver flex option, I think he's definitely entering that. Drake May looks to be excellent. So I would stack him kind of just like you. I think if the other guys get healthy, maybe Hollins takes the biggest dip out of all of them, since he was, kind of the lowest on the totem pole. But you never know in a wide receiver room that's this open, when a quarterback gets hot and they get that chemistry built. It's the type of wide receiver room where, like, who the quarterback likes to throw the ball to determines a lot more than like anything else. And none of these guys besides Diggs have done really anything in their career to show that they need to be a target hog, as you were saying earlier. So if Hollins and May are developing this kind of good chemistry on the field, I think that could carry on even when the other guys return, because at the end of the day, whatever makes the quarterback the most comfortable is usually in these situations how it tends to go, in terms of where even when he looks, even if when a play breaks down, if Hollins is somebody he feels safe throwing the ball to, that's going to get open, kind of like it seems like with Diggs, and May scrambles and gets out of the pocket quite a bit, then that matters more than exactly how you have the 1C, 1D, 1E on the offense. So yeah, I think that's good. I mean, I'm not spending anything more than a third. Diggs might be a little difficult to pry off a team for a third, but if he's still somehow stranded on a rebuilder team, I think at this point, people start getting to the point where some of these older players, where they start taking pretty much anything. I don't know if Diggs is that bad, or I mean, he hasn't been that great. I think you could take him off a team for a third. I'm definitely not paying anything more. If I can send a fourth for Hollins or Fab, make that sort of investment. That's kind of how I'm doing that. But otherwise, yeah, these guys are kind of in that tier where anything above a third feels drastically
For sure.
too much. But a lot of them are also the perfect pieces where when to get thrown into a deal that's larger, right? Like these are the perfect kind of stopgap fill-in players that help you get a deal done when it's trading bigger assets.
Yeah. Yeah. Matt Collins, I wanted to shout this out. Before tonight, he had above a 30% target share over the last two games. And I'm pretty sure that it's pretty close. He almost maintained that tonight. Maybe not, because I think Diggs had maybe like 10 targets or something like that. And I think Hollins had like 5. So it might be just below 30%, but still, nonetheless, he's seen, probably 20+% target share over the last 3 games now, which is something to note, especially when you have his team as good as they are, and Drake May, who throws a deep ball as good as he does. He's definitely noteworthy. Hey man, just yes or no? Kyle Williams?
No.
Okay, I had a feeling. That's all we needed to say there. And yeah, I agree with you. No more than a third for any of those guys. Honestly, we sold Pop for a fourth in one of the leagues. So you could probably get a lot less. Okay, let's move on to these next guys here. These guys we've been talking about quite a bit here. We're just going to shout them out again. Joe Flacco, Matt Stafford. Oh, and this isn't the best time to kind of insert this in here, but the Week 10 debrief did not get released because my mic was muted the entire time, so we had to pull that one from the air. But in that episode, we were talking about Joe Flacco and how Joe Burrow is returning from IR and coming back Week 13. But we said, or I said, that might just be fake news. Joe Flacco might be a sneaky buy for any contender still, because someone might be thinking, I got to get out on him. Joe Burrow's coming back this year. He's got 2 games left. I've been trying to sell him. I've been getting nothing but offers of fourths for him. I haven't sold for that. I still believe he's going to be here longer. So I'm still holding out for the third, hoping to get it. But I think those are sneaky buys. Matt Stafford continues to just be on an MVP run, which again, you guys would have been blessed with hearing Jose's depiction on that on the Week 10 if my mic would have cooperated.
Yeah, I wasn't gonna bring it up. I didn't want to, throw you under the bus there. We were kind of just gonna glaze over it. But yeah, Jmac's our engineer. He's our recorder. He pretty much does everything. So you can cut him some slack because he does a lot behind the scenes for the show, including getting everything up and running for every episode. So, it's going to happen, technology and all these things. But yeah, talking about these quarterbacks, Joe Flacco it could be fake news if the next 3 games the Bengals lose, which could easily happen. I mean, I don't think their schedule is that great. And then you look at it. Well, what are we doing with Joe Burrow? Is it really what we want to bring him back for? What, for 4 or 5 games on a lost season? It's kind of the Jaden Daniels thing where it's like, it's gonna, I think, depend more on what the team does while the quarterbacks are absent. And yeah, Stafford was probably a waiver guy if you're in redraft, and you're probably keeping him. And, I think people are going to have some tough decisions going down the line. Maybe you picked him up when on a bye week or when one of these quarterbacks got hurt, and now you have a pretty difficult decision. We had that decision where we don't want to drop him. We want to play Mahomes. We're probably going to play Mahomes, but we don't want to drop Stafford so he doesn't get used against us. And that's also, when you're, trying to get into the playoffs, trying to get into some of these things in redraft, that's definitely something to keep in mind. In terms of Stafford right now for Dynasty, do you think a third is pretty reasonable? I know you're saying you're trying to sell Flacco for that. Do you think you need more to get Stafford?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's taking probably more than a second nowadays.
Okay.
Yeah. I had Stafford and sold him, 2 games ago, and he's done nothing but, produce since then. And I was happy to get what I thought was, between a late first, early second round value and Quentin Johnston. So I think I think it's higher than people want it to be.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, he's kind of played himself into that weird situation where he's so old and if he wins the Super Bowl, he just decides to retire. The retirement thing is very plausible. So you're kind of buying a 1-year rental. So I think this is the type of move you really need to know that that's the player you are away from winning it all, especially in Dynasty. But yeah, man, I think the quarterbacks, those aging guys, definitely in super flex leagues are the type of guys that can really help you out there and get you that championship.
Thanks for qualifying that. Yeah, that was in 2 QB leagues there, super flex leagues.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive into these next tight ends here. Juwan Johnson and Mark Andrews. They both have great end of season strength of schedules here. They're also really cheap. Juwan Johnson has Chris Olave as target competition, and that's about it. And Tyler Shuck has not been half bad. Mark Andrews is still getting it done, and that tight end schedule for the Baltimore Ravens we've been talking about for a while is just really juicy. So I don't know what it takes to get these. Juwan Johnson might be on waivers in your redraft leagues. Mark Andrews, depending on the depth of it, it's probably going to be a little bit harder. But I had one redraft league where the manager wanted Tyrone Tracy for Mark Andrews because Mark Andrews was his backup tight end and it needed running back help. So those are the kind of deals that you can look at in redraft, I think. And in Dynasty, oh, man, what do you think Mark Andrews is going for in Dynasty right now?
Yeah, man, I not to sound like a broken record, but I mean, there's a reason these guys are, in the bargain bin. I really am not looking to pay more than a third, just because it's also not a difference maker tight end. This is like maybe you had whoever you were rocking with got hurt, or maybe you just were doing a committee going into the season and now you lost Kraft, or now Hawkinson isn't performing and you kind of want somebody. But Andrews is still the type of player that could completely like ruin you and give you a zero. Like, he
Yeah,
hasn't as much, but it can happen. So it's not, you're not buying as surefire production as like when we
that's
were
true.
talking about the running backs and some of the quarterbacks we talked about. Is more of a gamble. So I really, for that type of gamble, it's not the type of move that solidifies your championship. So I'm not really looking to pay more than a third or a fourth. Maybe it's like a slight tier down. Maybe you have some other tight end, or like you said, like that type of level of running back, a Tyrone Tracy, a Demarcado. I don't know if that gets done, but whoever has Mark Andrews now probably isn't, thinking they have some sort of, golden ticket. They're probably just holding on to a player. Maybe it's on their bench. Maybe it's behind, like in your case, or in a case where he's their backup tight end. I think that's the easiest way to lift off a player, because most people just see, oh, okay, like I can get something for this guy and never start. But yeah, I'm not really looking to spend up like compared to some of the other guys we talked about, because I just don't think these tight ends are that finishing piece to your championship. Like, if Mark Andrews or Juwan Johnson is who you're expecting to help you kind of get to the finish line, I think you probably are farther than you think. But they are good options in terms of, Kraft just went down last week or 2 weeks ago. So, somebody's looking in that situation. You don't want to, there's no way to get McBride. There's no way to get Bowers. These are good options to fill in there.
Yeah, for sure. All right, I'm going to throw in one last. We don't even have this guy in the doc, but I've been thinking about it, and he's not really an old crusty vet, and he's not really cheap in Dynasty, but in redraft, he is cheap. People are just disregarding this guy. It's Travis Etienne. If you need a running back, I think he's sneaky to go and get. He's involved in his offense now that we have Travis Hunter out for the season and BTJ battling injury. They do have help coming back. Obviously, we have Jacoby Myers on the team and Brenton Strange coming back. But he's been pretty good this year. And he has really explosive runs. I think he's, as far as percentage of runs that go for over 10 or 15 yards, the explosive run rate, he's like top 8, top 7, behind guys like Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor. Like, he's in like that 30% mark, which is really, really that's the number. The percentage of his total yards come from those type of runs is in like the 30% mark. So I think he's sneaky, because I've tried to trade him away because I have him on teams where I have strong running back cores, and I'm trying to, I recognize the production he has, and I'm trying to trade him away, and people just aren't interested. So I think that's a sneaky ad in redraft.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of plug your nose. I'm not a big fan of ETN myself, but he does fit this category, like the Aaron Joneses or Ramondre Stevenson, although he's not nearly as old. I think that the name fatigue and just how bad some of the games have been last year when he was hurt, and then at the beginning of this year, can be definitely a fill-in, right? If you lost one of these running backs, or you need somebody for week 14 and going into the playoffs as a flex, just to give you maybe an option. I think in redraft, when you get to the playoffs and you're getting into, you want to just have options and to play the matchups. Maybe he's not a guy you're looking to flex and start every single week, but it just gives you another option based on the matchup, and maybe a little bit of insurance in case one of your main running backs goes down going into after the deadline.
Yeah, if nothing else, I think he's a solid flex. He's one of those guys that can get you 10 points easy on a week, but can also pop off and get you 25. All right, let's get out. The trade deadline is here. The shop is closed. Time to get gross. The trade deadline came and went. All the luxury models are off the lot and unavailable. The McCaffrey F1, the Mercedes JSNs, the Lamari Enzo, the Hendoghini. They're all gone. But now it's about survival, bye weeks, injuries, empty benches. It's time to find cheap production because you can't buy it anymore. You got to find them off the waiver wires. So let's get into yesterday's leftovers, the Slop Shop. First up, man, we got some reliable beaters. These old cars, but they're still running. These guys, oh, guys, plug your nose. It's about to get gross in here. We got some names on this list. I'm just going to run through all of these, Jose. You tell me which of these guys you can stomach putting on your roster. I'm going to leave a couple of them out here. We'll toss in at the end. But Tyler Lockett, Cade Otton, Isaiah Pacheco, Calvin Ridley, Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the names you mentioned, I think Cup is probably still the most interesting. He's playing probably for the best offense out of the ones you mentioned. I think Pacheco as well. You can, probably find them out there. He's probably been dropped or, because of the injuries. So I think he's definitely another one. I mean, we were pretty excited. I mean, quote unquote, excited for what you can be for how Pacheco has looked, but in terms of his running back share that he was getting, so I definitely think he's those are the two names that stick out the most. I mean, Otton, he seems like a necessity. So if you're really struggling at tight end, he seems like something that the offense needs just because of how many injuries they have to the wide receivers, right? Evans is gone for the rest of the season. We know Godwin seems like he's not coming back until when he's not, fantasy relevant. They said end of November, December. So it's barely going to be for the fantasy playoffs, it feels like. So he's another guy. I think those three guys, I mean, I guess one for each position, the tight end, the running back, and wide receiver. Those are kind of the old cards that are still running that I think, won't leave me stranded, or they'll get me close enough to work, or maybe I'll walk the rest of the way. But, they will get me as close to as where I need to be as possible. These are the type of guys that you're just hoping you pick them up and play them the right week, right? Like these are guys that maybe one week it's Cooper Kupp, the next is Terry McLaurin if he gets healthy, maybe the next one is Pacheco. Like you're cycling through, just trying to find that guy, like you said, that can maybe get you, the 9 to 11 points on a flex during a bye, during an injury, during your last push to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, like all four of these guys, I'm okay with putting on my roster. I'm hoping I don't have to because my roster is in pretty bad shape if these guys are making it. But Tyler Lockett this week, especially going up against the Cowboys, I think is really sneaky. Especially seeing his involvement last week, I'm curious to see if that kind of extrapolates and continues on to this week and future weeks. Last week was the second week in Las Vegas, so that's kind of like the acclimation. He's over the acclimation period and getting into more routes and stuff like that. So I think he's really interesting. I think Cade Otton also is really sneaky. The Tampa Bay has a really good strength of schedule, I think, for tight ends. I want to say for the playoffs, they play Miami in the championship week, 2.8, and then they play Carolina in the semis, and they play Atlanta in the what do we call that? The first round wild card week. So if you have a locked in first round bye, he might be a good target for you to stash. Calvin Ridley, man, that just feels real gross. I don't think I want to go there, but if he comes back and maybe shows a little bit of promise and gives some life to that Tennessee offense, maybe. And Cooper Kupp feels good too.
Yeah, I was going to say Ridley. I think we were all, I think as a fantasy community, pretty decently excited, right? In terms of what the target share could be if Cam Ward could just be, decent. And obviously Cam Ward is looking like a complete failure. I don't know, but maybe that's too harsh based on what they have around him. But he's really not looking like an NFL ready quarterback at this moment. So out of all the other guys, it's exactly what you said. It's like, well, one, do any of these other guys play the Cowboys? Terry McLaurin does in Week 17 if he can get healthy. So that's a big thing. The other guys is like, matchups. That's all you can do is just
Right.
matchups. Like Tyler Lockett, like you said, playing the Cowboys this week has just a good of a chance to score a couple touchdowns or get 100 yards just because of how bad the defense is. So it's only that, right? And like you were saying, like you're hoping this is your third flex or in bigger leagues, something like that. And maybe you're a team that's scratching, crawling, to get into the playoffs just to try to make it, right? These are kind of the decisions. These are time of the players that if you're still trying to make it, you have to be thinking about, right? You have to go deep kind of into the well and really reach. And it's the type of guy that you play all of a sudden, someone's like, oh, this guy picked up Tyler Lockett and he's playing him against me. That's weird. And then all of a sudden Tyler Lockett draws 15 points and he's like, why did this guy just start Tyler Lockett against me and beat me, right? Like those are the type of moves, and it happens every week to somebody. So you want to be that somebody and get those points.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think on that same note, I guess he's a little bit different. But yeah, let's get out of these reliable beaters here, and let's see if we can find, maybe some cars out there. They got a lot of potential, but they need a little bit of they need a little bit of work. The fixer uppers, they got some upside, but they're in need of a tune up. These are the guys they've been sputtering, but the right repair job, like a depth chart shakeup, could get them humming. Um, so these guys again, man, like I just look at this list and it's it's not great, but we're gonna go through them. Chris Rodriguez, Michael Wilson, Sean Tucker, Parker Washington, Booty, Holland, Mac Hollins, Pop Douglas, all those guys together. Cedric Tillman, Jaden Reed, and I got one more on here that I'm just gonna touch on right now, and then we can leave it alone. But this is a best ball play. Calvin Austin. His best games come versus man coverage heavy teams, and he plays Miami in week 15 for the playoffs. 24% man coverage. They're in coverage. Week 16 is Detroit, 34%. And week 17 is Cleveland. 44% of the time they're in man coverage. And I think Calvin Austin could get you a spike week in those playoff weeks. So if you have the opportunity to stash him in a playoff league, I would think that's wise. But okay, of these other guys here, man, who are you liking to put on the squad?
Yeah, I think I'll divide it into two kind of categories. Like I think a couple of them are like the type of players you're kind of looking just right now. If you need points right now, this very week coming up, the next week, Sean Tucker, Michael Wilson, right, with the injuries that they're to the people ahead of them, and then Parker Washington, I think is if he's not injured, it kind of falls into that. And then there's a couple guys that I'm probably if I'm in a desperate situation, like if I'm trying to make the playoffs, if I need wins now, they're not players I'm trying to play. But if I'm more of a team that's on the, pretty securely going to the playoffs, they're guys I want to hold just because given what could happen, they could actually turn into maybe some league winners. And that's Chris Rodriguez and Jaden Reed also kind of in that boat. And then one of the right receivers who we've talked a decent amount in New England there. I think one of them could definitely be pretty important down the stretch. Chris Rodriguez, I think it's pretty interesting. That backfield does not seem to have any sort of owner, but if somebody's going to do it, it looks like maybe it might be Chris Rodriguez who's given the chance.
Mm-hmm.
And if the offense can kind of start humming and getting going, if Daniels is able to come back, which seems like it's kind of incredible that he could even be back this season and even back within a few weeks. I don't know how that's even humanly possible based on what that injury looked like, but that's kind of how it would split him. And then Parker Washington, I think he popped up on the injury report, but if he is good to go, I think he's also one of those longer term plays that could be more of a flex option down the road, just based on how much targets he's getting. And BTJ, I don't know what he's going to continue to do. So that's kind of how it would split him up. And yeah, I mean, Cedric Tillman, I don't think I'm interested at all. It doesn't, nothing there. Sean Tucker, I think just like I said, like maybe this week and next week, it looks like Bucky's finally on the way back.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's how I would break him up.
Yeah, no, I think my favorite on this list is probably Parker Washington. I was really impressed with what he put on tape last week. Um, and I don't think BTJ, even when he does get back, is going to be the guy that we need him to be or want him to be. I think he's just going to be clearing routes. And the only thing I am worried about is Brenton Strange and Jacoby Myers, but Parker Washington looks pretty cemented in his role and has pretty good connection with Trevor Lawrence, which is weird to say because he hasn't shown connection with anybody. Um, but nonetheless, I think he's my favorite of these guys. And then, yeah, same with the New England backfield or wide receiver core. One of those guys, Matt Collins, would be my favorite.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, yeah, let's get out of these grosser guys and let's get into something a little more exciting. The fresh paint jobs, the rookies that are still sitting in the garage. Every year we've got rookies who look the part but haven't quite left the driveway yet. They're shiny, full of potential, and they're still waiting for that first real spin. Some guys that we have in this list here are Brashard Smith, Luther Burden the third, Colston Loveland, Kyle Williams, and Jaden Higgins. Any of these guys already stashed on your team, or you looking to stash?
Yeah, I mean, I have a decent bit of Colston Loveland
Mm.
in terms of tight ends, and Brashard Smith. He's kind of a guy you're doing that dance of picking up, dropping. He's kind of the first guy cut from most of my teams, but the first one to kind of add, just because we've seen it from the Chiefs, right? As soon as one of these guys get hot, they could be league winning, especially with how well Mahomes and that offense are playing, even if they're not always winning. So I think he's the most kind of exciting. He seems to have the most juice and the least competition, right? I mean, Kareem Hunt is there because of Pacheco, but in the moment, Kareem Hunt's also pretty old himself, so there could be an injury or, like you said, a roster depth chart shakeup that kind of helps him kind of catapult up there. I think they also just had their bye, right, which tends to
Mm-hmm.
be a pretty big change. Like we saw it with Xavier Worthy after their bye. We've seen it with some of their other players after their bye. The Chiefs seem like they really take a good long look at who's on their team and how can they help them down the stretch. So it could be that Brashard Smith all of a sudden has a lot more touches if Andy Reid and the offense trust him after this bye week. So he's the biggest one. And then Colston Loveland, I just think it's just so crowded that it's difficult to see. And Caleb Williams still has some bad games, so it's hard to see how he gets enough love, so to speak. But yeah, he would be the second one. The other guys are just, if you have a bench spot, it's always better to add rookies. Like we've talked about a lot of old dudes, but like some of these old dudes that people put on their rosters, like you much rather have one of these rookies who we haven't seen anything from that could all of a sudden, turn their season around, rather than, the old and broken down, junker that what you're getting.
Yeah, for sure. These guys are more stash plays if you don't need a start. Whereas the guys above that we were talking about were more of immediate starts looking for, points to put in that flex or fill a bye week. Yeah, man. I like the Brashard Smith call a lot. I have him stashed in most places. So you're probably not getting him off waivers in the leagues you're with me. But nonetheless, he saw in his last three games prior to the last one, which they played against the Bills, he had 9 targets over those 2 games, or 9 receptions, I think, over those 2 games. And my theory is that they didn't use him against the Bills because they're expecting to see them in the playoffs, and they wanted to hide Brashard Smith and save what he can do for those playoff weeks. So that's my theory. I think Reed is smart enough to kind of do stuff in that sense, and I expect a big uptick in usage for him here with Isaiah Pacheco hurt. But nonetheless, I think Colston Loveland's a good shout. I'll speak to the other bear, Luther Burden the third. DJ Moore is really banged up, and I don't know if. I mean, last week he was limited with like a groin, and now he's limited with like a shoulder. So it doesn't look good for him. And if he goes down, Luther Burden steps up into that role. But that's just a hard stash to keep. So he's kind of you're playing the fish and catch and release game with him. And then Jaden Higgins for the Texans. I don't really want to roster the wide receiver 2 on the Texans squad here, but he is showing promise here, and I liked him as a prospect coming in. So in those deeper leagues where you can stash guys like this, I would feel good putting them on the end of the bench.
Yeah, I mean, this might be one of those players for one of the other segments that we were talking about that just kind of popped into my head as you were talking about Burden. Um, I just don't see the snaps like going out for Burden, even with DJ Moore. Maybe I'm wrong. I think the guy there is Olamide Zacchaeus, or however maybe you might say his name. I mean, he's seen a decent amount of work even with DJ Moore on. DJ Moore on. That sounds weird to say. Uh, I think I'm not trying to offend this man, but yeah, I think that he could be one of those guys based on matchups. Maybe if DJ Moore is out for this week, he might be a good shout off the waiver. He's definitely probably on every waiver out there, besides maybe deep dynasty leagues that you could throw into your lineup this week if DJ Moore misses. I'd like him over Burden. I think it's just kind of late in the season to see the breakout for Burden happen in such a. It's not like the people in front of him that are hurt are the put him at the top. It still kind of feels like he's still second, maybe even third behind Odunze and Zacchaeus. So that's why I'm a little bit more out on Burden, but it's definitely worth taking a shot. Like we said with these guys, it's better to have that than I mean, I'd rather roster Burden than Calvin Ridley, for example.
Mhm.
Like, just for what we've seen this season, it seems like there's more of a chance Burden could maybe give you something than Ridley coming off an injury with a horrible quarterback.
No, I agree 100%. Yeah, Burden, he is explosive. As a prospect, we haven't seen it yet. Um, I would like to believe he's better than Olamide Zacchaeus, but Zacchaeus and Caleb Williams seem to have a connection. And yeah, I've been touting Zacchaeus would already be on your best ball squads if you've been listening, paying attention here. I like that call for him, but I do think if DJ Moore goes down, I would like to believe rational coaching would like to see what they have in their rookie, so they know what to do with future contracts for next year if they need to build around Luther Burden or get if they need to extend Olamide Zacchaeus, because he's a stud. All right, that's gonna wrap it up for the guys in the slop shop here. But I did want to touch on some defensive stashes here for the playoffs. If you guys are looking real good for making the playoffs and you don't really need to stash players, you're real strong, and you just want to get in there and stash those defenses for your redraft leagues. The New York Giants are playing Washington, Minnesota, and at Las Vegas for their championship matchups. Houston, which is probably one of my favorite playoff stashes here, is Arizona, Las Vegas, and then at the Chargers in championship week, which is a little shaky. But Houston is a really good defense, so that's why I like them. And then Tampa Bay would be Atlanta, at Carolina, and then at Miami in championship week. So, are you the type of guy to stash defenses for championship week or for
Oh yeah,
playoffs?
100%. I think it's something that even if not just championship, but just a few weeks out, if you have that ability, I think it's definitely something that can give you a big edge because defensive scoring can be pretty big and a big boost, right? Like in a situation where somebody maybe isn't thinking about that until the week of, and you've already scooped up that defense. Another one I wanted to shout out for there, and they're not particularly a great defense, but the matchups and them playing at home, two of the games during the championship also calls to me is New Orleans, and they play Tennessee away from home. Obviously, the Saints are not some sort of world beater defense, but I think they've done decent when
Mhm.
playing against like some of these really bad teams, right? Like they have for the most part performed. So that would be another one I would shout out. But yeah, I'm definitely somebody who tries to pick up a defense. I don't mind rostering the second defense going into this part of the season. I think it's just a smart thing to do if you can afford it, right? If you're scrambling, trying to fight for wins, maybe it's not something, you need as many backup running backs or flyer wide receivers because, your roster is not ready to be thinking about a second defense.
Yeah, no, for sure. I like that. Yeah, I saw the New Orleans Saints on there, and I was like, do I shout them out, man? Like this feels, but no, it's good nonetheless. All right, man. We got another one in the books, episode 17. Thank you all for hanging out with us here. Hopefully, we can keep this schedule consistent moving forward, and we'll be able to get these episodes out to you guys on Fridays the week before, I guess I should say before the main slate games go off, so we can get you the information that is still relevant and fresh and not, a week later. But you can look forward for the debrief still coming out on Wednesdays here. Hopefully we can get my mic plugged in and ready to go this time. But Jose, man, thanks for hanging out with me. Always appreciate you.
Yeah, man, it's always a pleasure. It's always fun. We're closing in here on 20 episodes. Feels like time has just flown by. But as always, guys, we're on YouTube. Please subscribe, comment, like, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we're out.